But yes, so I've started recording, and today I will record probably the core discussion. We will have lots of group discussion and some informal chat, so we'll probably just cut that out, but I'll just get to the core aspect today. So welcome to week 2. Week 1 was all about strategy. We spoke about strategy. We talked about what is strategy, and we wanted to get a sense of a bit of background about what is strategy. So may I just quickly reflect before I dive into today's talk? May I please have a bit of reflection, and I would like someone just to volunteer and come up with some your thoughts. What is strategy? Or where was it originated from? Maybe that's my interest to know. Okay, and I hope you don't mind me doing some cold calling as well. Sometimes I'll just call by name. Don't get offended and don't get alarmed as well, because I'm not trying to put you on spot. The aim is not to put you on spot, but also an opportunity to meet with you as well. Tanzila Jahan. I think I have not. Yeah, were you present last class?
Yes, sir, I'm present.
Yeah, all right. Maybe your camera was not on. Maybe I have not.
Yes,
or maybe.
sir.
Yeah. Anyway, so Tanzila, what's strategy to you? And tell me, where was it originated from?
Sir, according to me, strategy is some kind of plan that organization need to obtain their objective or sustain in the long run.
Yes, very well.
And also be competitive with their competitor. It's a kind of competitive advantages.
Yes. So if we look back to the historical origin of strategy, where was the talk started, or where was the concept originated from? Can someone just shed light onto that?
So it has come from stratego, which is a Greek word. It means general.
Yes, very well said. Thank you so much. And we also spoke about a book. Can someone remind me of that book?
The Art of War.
Yes, The Art of War. Who was the book written by?
Shanju.
Yes.
The writer name.
Yeah, a Chinese military general. His name was, I don't know if it's called Sun Tzu or Sun Shu. It's a Chinese pronunciation. But he was the military general who wrote that book. And that was long time ago. He wrote that book. So that was probably the first time there was some discussion around how to tackle your employees, how to battle with your employees with some carefully devised planning. So the strategy experts, they relate the word strategy with as far as back during those times, earliest of civilization, when that military general in his book, he was talking about how do you tackle your enemies? How do you challenge your enemies? How do you carefully develop a battle plan? So a lot of the scholars, they associate the word strategy with military origin. They say that the word strategy has a military origin. So it first generated, and still today, you see a lot of the strategies actually, it relates a lot with the military, and the defense force. They have a lot of use of this word strategy. But in the business domain, the word started to get in during the 1950s. That's what we discussed. And then there was some revolution or some transition, like 1950s or 60s. That time, people only talked about sales. 1970s, people only talked about marketing. 1980s, people started to talk about competitive advantage. And from 2000 onwards, nowadays, strategy is a word which is very vaguely used, but very widely used. So simply put, the word strategy refers to a set of carefully devised plan that you need to action. So it's a set of action plan that you want to achieve in order to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage in the market. So the terminology called sustainable competitive advantage is what is integrally related with strategy. So a lot of these, what I'm talking about, these are all content for your quiz, all right? So keep that in mind as well, because we will be having some quizzes. So our today's session at a glance, we will talk about the macro environmental factors today, because it's really important to understand the environment. So what is macro? I will explain that to you. We'll talk about a framework called PESTEL, P-E-S-T-E-L. We'll talk about industry elements, and Porter's 5 forces model is another theory that we're going to talk about today. Now, I have mentioned this one before in my first class, that among the various scholars who have championed the field of strategic management, one name that always will stand out is Michael Porter. So Michael E. Porter was a Harvard professor, Harvard University professor, and he was probably the one who has given the most comprehensive theories and conceptualization. In fact, he was the one who brought the terminology called competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantage. So we will be talking about one very popular model of Michael Porter, which is called 5 forces model. And I would definitely request you just to engage into that discussion, because if you understand Michael Porter's 5 forces model, you can consider yourself that you have a bit of understanding about strategic management. So let us just dive in. Now, before any brand or any organization wants to develop a strategic direction, there are a few things that an organization needs to keep in mind. And this is called their mission statement, vision statement, some strategies, some objectives, and goals. Have you ever seen organizations having a mission and vision statement? Can someone tell me anything about that? So I'll give you a clue.
Almost all the organizations have these statements. If
yes.
you go to their websites, they have these statements.
That is right. All the organization, they have their statement. Probably we have to just define that a little clearer. Is it a mission statement? Is it a vision statement? So you can see I have this downward pyramid that suggests how these things trickles down from vision, mission, strategies, objectives, and goals. All right, so this is how it sort of trickles down from vision. So every organization will probably start with a vision statement. Now, sometimes mission and vision statement is alternatively used, but what essentially it suggests a broad view where the company is headed. And usually that's a very aspirational goal, like just in one sentence, very clear. I'll give you some examples. And then your mission statement will further definition of the vision, like how exactly you want to achieve that. It's more tactical, but still strategic in nature. Sometimes the vision and mission are combined, or the company only has a mission. So many companies, they have their mission and vision statement like intertwined with one another. And then they will have some of their strategies. And the strategies will then further be deconstructed with some objectives. And then the objectives will further be deconstructed with some goals. All right, so this is how it works. All right. So we'll be giving some examples as well. We'll use some examples as well to understand what is a vision, what's a mission, strategies, objectives, and goals. All right. So let me first share with you the vision statement of top brands in the world. Here's a list of top brands. I'm pretty sure you understand these brands. Apple at the beginning, to challenge the status quo, to think differently. So you can understand, does it anywhere say that what brand they're working or what product that they deal with? No, it doesn't say. It doesn't say whether they actually sell Apple or they actually sell computer. It does not suggest, but it's very aspirational to challenge that status quo, to think differently. Coke, to refresh the world and inspire moments of optimism and happiness. Where does that relate to carbonated drinks? I can't see the link. But yes, they do sell carbonated beverages, soft drinks. Facebook, to give people the power to build community so that they can bring the world closer together. It does not say they have social media. Microsoft, to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. It does not give a clue that they have operating systems. As you can see, that this is all the vision statement of these brands, and none of the word will actually suggest that what they actually do. So what does that mean to you? What do you think?
Sir, is it possible to make the slide in a wider screen? It's not visible from my end.
All right, apologies for that. Does that help?
It's okay.
Better?
Sir, pretty quite. This.
Is it better?
So it'll be
Yes, sir,
better
it's
if you
better.
make it a big font.
No, it's fine. We can see.
Yeah,
no,
sir,
it's
it's
okay.
fine. We can see.
All right.
Hello, sir.
Because
This is
I
Sujma.
can't enlarge this any further.
No, it is the maximum size, sir.
Yeah,
Hello,
it's
sir.
can you see the slideshow?
Yes, sir.
Not with the slide form. We can see the whole like
All right,
slides like
let
in
me
one.
try something else. All right.
Sir, if anyone is from mobile phone, then I think they are not being able to see the full screen.
Yeah, probably mobile would not give you that bigger experience. But
Sir,
is this
মোবাইল
one
থেকেও
better?
স্যার করা যাচ্ছে স্যার মোবাইল থেকেও স্ক্রিনটা কিন্তু বড়
Yeah,
করা
this
যায়
also fine. This also fine, sir. Can read. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So that's the maximum, like the slideshow view, it doesn't get. And the fonts, actually, this is like an image that I've copied from the web. So I can't enlarge the fonts here, what you can see. But don't worry, the fonts in the following slides, they are a bit bigger, so you would be able to see. So as we were reflecting that these are the vision statement of the top brands. Now, none of the words in this vision statement list suggests what is actually their business. What do they do? What does that tell to you? Can someone just have any reflection?
Like they were basically by this vision statement, they maybe wants to see the world in this way or see the transformation in this way. But they didn't mention any product, but by using, they later on relate their products by using or by improving those products, by introducing those products, we can achieve those vision, towards those vision. It not be that achievable thing, but it's something like it's their ultimate place where they want to go.
Yes. So the thing that is standing out here, as you have rightly pointed out, thank you, is that your vision statement has to be something very aspirational, like a broad overarching reason of the existence of the brand. So if we reflect on Apple, their simple mission is to challenge the status quo. Status quo means what the traditional wisdom says, or the traditional norm, and they want to challenge that. And we can actually see that every product that they bring into the market with this cutting edge technology, with the newest innovation, and they have pioneered everything, whether it's computing, whether it's smartphone, whether it's operating system, whether it's the apps library, they're like doing that. If we think about the Coke, to refresh the world and inspire moments of optimism and happiness, you can never get a clue, like what does optimism and happiness comes with a beverage? You can't even relate. But maybe it's a bit vague, like vision statement tends to be a bit vague sometimes, but the brands will try to just connect the dot with their vision statement at one point, and they have some of their strategies and some of their products, so they will just try to connect that together. So all of these brands, they're the top brands undoubtedly, but the vision statement is actually a broad overarching statement that remains within the mind of the founder or the leader or the top executives. And then they have to bring some strategies. All right, so here's our vision. So how do we achieve those vision? Then you need to bring some strategies. Okay, so maybe this could be our strategy. Then they will think about, all right, so once we have got the strategies, then have some objectives. When it comes to defining objectives, they'll have to think about a SMART model: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So we will spend a lot of time talking about those in another class. But what I want you now to quickly, and this I want you to do as an individual, think about a brand of your choice, research their mission and vision statement. Now, quickly, can you just do that? Or even if you know that already, what's the mission and vision statement? I'm not asking everyone, probably let's just get some views, maybe 2-3 different views from you. I want you to think about a brand of your choice. And just because every statement, every brand, if you just Google the mission and vision statement of this brand or that brand, you'll find they have got a page where they declare their mission and vision statement. And that's really important to understand. And actually every organization, at least the ones that are successful and striving to be successful, they need to have a broad vision and mission statement. That's really the key. So maybe someone could volunteer and come up with some thoughts.
Sir, if I talk about the vision statement of Apple that you have just shown, I think it also provides the employees or those who work for Apple a direction, towards the values that the company wants their employees to live and breathe.
Yes.
Or the direction, because seeing at the vision statement, if I have the employee of Apple, and I'd assume that these vision statements encourages me to risk take. So I'll not be afraid to take risks because they are encouraging us to think differently, come up with something new. And when you want to do something new, you have to have the mindset of taking risks. And yeah, so probably that I think a vision statement also provides this direction also.
All right, anyone else? Any other brands, anything that rings a bell or anything you want to share?
Brack NGO.
Okay, that's a household name, yeah.
Yes, so their vision is like a world free from all forms of exploitation, where everyone has the opportunity to realize their potential. So if we look back at whatever Brack is doing, be it the programs they are conducting, everything is aimed at empowering the livelihood, empowering individuals, especially those who are in extreme poverty, to realize their potential, so that they be innovative to come up with something that can help them to sustain their livelihood and to realize their potential. And then if we look at the mission, it's like to empower people and communities in situations of poverty, illiteracy, disease, and social injustices, and their interventions aim to achieve large-scale positive changes through economic and social programs that enable women and men to realize their potential. So we are seeing that many people are faced with challenges, especially like we can look into domestic violence. People are into extreme poverty. We are seeing illiteracy. For example, I can give examples of like developing countries. There are many young children who are like lacking the scholastic materials. So BRAC is trying to empower these people through setting up small scale, say if it is education, ECD centers where people can go and access free education. And also poverty, there are many like village groups they are setting up, the illnesses they are trying to get into the ground and check the maternal health of the pregnant mothers, the malnourished kids. So they are doing all these to achieve their big goal, because if they don't come at the roots where the causes are, actually they cannot reach where they want to be. So not until these challenges have been addressed at the root base, so that's the only way they can realize the potential and achieve the vision, the wider view of the organization.
Okay, that's very comprehensive. Thanks, Namfuka. Now, let me just share one example, and I've got some in the chat screen. That's great. So Uzma shared the Nike's mission statement. Their mission is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. So yeah, it's quite comprehensive. So yeah, now let me just share my screen again. Sorry, I was just adding something in the slide. So here's one example for you, all right? So this again gives you an example of something which is an agricultural business, all right? So an agricultural business, and I think it's called AGVA. So it's an agricultural business. And see, the reason I'm sharing this one here is that so that you understand how it just trickles down. So the mission here, again, apologies for the font size, because I can't, if I just enlarge it too much, then it just goes out of the slide and it's just blowing out of the proportion. So
hello, sir.
That, yeah.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sir. মানে আমি একটা জিনিস বলতে চাচ্ছিলাম, যদি হচ্ছে সবাই আমরা ফোন দিয়ে ঢুকি, ফোন দিয়ে কিন্তু স্যার স্ক্রিনটা বড় করা যায়, মানে স্ক্রিনে টাচ করে, মানে যেমন আমি বড় করে দেখতে পাচ্ছি, মানে আপনি যদি স্যার ছোট করে রাখেন স্ক্রিনটা, তারপরে হচ্ছে স্ক্রিনটা বড় করা যায়।
Okay, that's
স্ক্রিনে
good.
টাচ করে।
Okay, that's good. Good advice. So Uzma is saying that you can enlarge the screen even if you're using your phone. So all you have to do, tap the screen, and then you can enlarge the screen if that is something you're doing.
And so another thing, from your laptop, you can also zoom in the slides.
Yeah. Okay.
In the corner, there is a zooming option, so you can do it by using that.
Yeah, no, I can do that, but all I'm doing is just trying, because I have to work simultaneously, check the screen as well, like, you know, you guys are in the class, so I'll have to check that while I am also using Zoom. So I will share my screen again. Yeah, sorry. See, this is just an example of an organization having a mission statement, vision statement, and then some goals and some objectives. So what I'm trying to show you is that generally the mission statement is very broad and overarching. So this one is an agribusiness, just example of XYZ agribusiness, all right? To create and facilitate the development of value-added business. So that's their, like, you know, overarching mission. The vision statement is a vibrant rural economy driven by value-added agriculture. But how do you going to achieve those mission and vision statements? To improve profitability, to increase efficiency, to capture a bigger market share, to provide better customer service, to improve employee training, to reduce carbon emission. Now, still the goals are a bit broad, because you can say to increase profitability, but it does not say how much you want to increase your profitability. It still says to increase efficiency, but it's still not clear how you're going to increase the efficiency, not clear. So then you need some objectives. So your objectives has to be very precise, and that's where the success lies. The brands that are able to just pinpoint their mission and vision statement with some objectives, they're the one who are successful. So in this case, you can see to earn at least 20% after-tax rate of return on our net investment during the next fiscal year, to increase market share by 10% over the next 3 years, to lower operating costs by 15% over the next 2 years by improving the efficiency of the manufacturing process. So this all suggests that objectives have to be very precise. So you start with a very broad vision and mission statement. It could be intertwined sometimes, or it could be separate. Then you'll have some goals, and then you need to have some objectives that will define your goals. All right. So hopefully this gives you a very clear understanding about what is the strategic direction. And this entire thing we call the strategic direction. So typically these are the discussion that will go with the planning manager of the organization, the ones that are really involved into the chief commercial officer of the brand, or the chief executive of the organization, or some of the leaders. They're the one who talk about these things, and then they define all of these things. So this is really the key of the strategic management. You need to understand the mission and vision statement and things like that. Any question from anyone?
Sir, I think here I want to ask about the timing or the validity of the mission, vision, goal, and objective. I think mission and vision are permanent, right? And the goal and objective that may change over time.
Very nice question. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased that you asked this question. It's a very good question. So mission and vision statements are generally set in stone, or that means they seldom change. An organization can sometimes revise their mission and vision statement maybe after 10 years or 20 years, or usually very long term. But the goals and objectives, they are less permanent. That means they will be changed every year or every 2 years. Goals are still like, midterm, like, their longevity or their duration is still like midterm, but the objectives, they will change every year, probably every 3 months, every 6 months, or every year. So it's a really good question. When you devise your goals and objectives, there's got to be the time element. What is the time frame of this goal and objectives? And you will see with the current day and age, the market is so dynamic and so fiercely competitive. Every brand out there, they are actually revising their strategies every now and then, because every now and then they're facing tremendous amount of competition. So that's why they have to rapidly change their objectives and strategies. Otherwise, they would not be able to sustain. And a very good example we will talk about, has anyone of you heard about a brand called Kodak?
Yes, sir.
Someone tell me about Kodak.
Yes,
what happened to
Yes,
Kodak?
sir.
Kodak was the camera's film producing company, Kodak Film.
Yes.
And with
They
time,
also produce camera
we
actually
didn't actually
with
innovate
films as
its
well.
product. That's why with time, people forget to use Kodak product, and after that they used to use the digital cameras, and also we have phone. So that's why Kodak actually declined their market share day by day.
Yes, very good. So similar story like Nokia phones as well. We talked about Nokia, I think, last class. So Nokia was also another big story. Like, people used to love, adore the Nokia branded phones. They were the pioneer, market leader of the global market share. Similarly, Kodak was the one who invented, they're the pioneer of the film and the photographic, sector. They were probably the pioneer. They invented a lot of those technologies. But despite being the market leader, they weren't able to set their strategic direction, because when the whole world was moving towards the digitization of the photographic and film, they could not update their strategies. They could not keep up with the pace of the market. Eventually, they were thrown out of the market. They were kicked out of the market. And then other brands took over, like Canon and Fuji And some of these brands, they took over the market. Sony, they took over the market. And eventually, Kodak was entirely thrown out of the market. Similar story with Nokia as well. Nokia is still struggling. I mean, BlackBerry was probably another example. BlackBerry, Nokia, these were like, you know, the pioneer of those communications. But nowadays they are gone because, you know, Apple and Samsung and all of these, like, you know, smartphone, like Chinese low-cost smartphone manufacturers, they took over the market. So the lesson from this is that you need to constantly update your mission and vision and strategies as well. Kodak wasn't able to update their strategies when the whole market was shifting towards digitization, and a lot of those old technologies were not being used. They did not change. So I guess that was a good discussion and gives a very clear understanding the importance of the strategic direction. So your mission, vision, goals, objectives will give you that strategic direction in the market. So next up in our discussion here, we have something very important, which is understanding that why do we need to understand the environment? Because this is another key. So as you can see on the far left, we have two diagrams, one on the top and one at the bottom. The top one says that thinking strategically about a company's external environment. That's really important. And thinking strategically about a company's internal environment. So every organization has two different environments that will influence its decision and its direction, external and internal. Today, we're talking about external. And the external environment is known as the macro environmental factor, because this is like the broad outside factors that are not within the organization's control. And this is known as the macro environmental factor. So when you know the external and the internal environmental factors, what it helps to form a strategic vision of where the company needs to head. And then identify promising strategic options for the company. And then finally, select the best strategy and business model for the company. So this is really very important first to understand the external. So today we are here. We are talking about here. In the upcoming classes, we will be talking about the internal aspect. We will be talking about strategic vision. We'll be talking about, and we'll see what are the best strategies. So our today's discussion is entirely about the external environment. So when it comes to understanding the external environment, there are a few elements or few aspects of the external environment. So let's just dig into those. So the external environment is comprised of few factors, which are divided into the sub-factors. And this is known as PESTEL: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. These are all elements of the external environment. Every organization will be influenced indirectly, not directly, because these forces, they indirectly influence the organization and its decision making. Political situation, which will have the government stability, tax policy, regulation, infrastructure. Then the economic factor, which involves economic growth, inflation, the monetary policy, employment rate. So as you can see, these are only some, in the bullet points, these are only some examples of these various sub-factors within each of these external environmental elements. So it's really important for the organization to do a thorough analysis of all of these factors. So imagine how these factors influence the organization. They have very direct and sometimes mostly indirectly. The direct influencing factors are the internal ones, and that we'll talk about in our next class when we'll talk about what are the internal, because the internals would first affect the organization very directly. But these ones, they are having direct effect. like the political system. Imagine if there's like political instability in the country, what's going to happen? The business is going to collapse, or this is going to affect the transportation. This is going to affect the, like, you know, the factories and workers. The change in the tax policy, that's going to influence the organization for sure. Then if you look into each of these sub-factors, each of these factors is going to influence the organization in a way or another. So that's why it's important exercise for the strategic manager of the organization to do a pastel analysis. So in your assessments, this is another clue. You'll probably have to do some pastel analysis as well. You don't know, it could be for your midterm, it could be for the assessments that you have. The topics will be shared with you. You'll probably have to do some pastel analysis. And that's where you do an analysis of these, all the various environmental factors. Any question from anyone on this?
Sir, those sub-factors could be more, right? Like in political,
Yes.
not necessarily only 4, there could be some more as well.
Exactly. This list is not an exhaustive list. Like, this will depend on the country or the emerging political situation of the country. So these are always like changeable, or, you know, it depends on the country itself.
Okay.
All right.
Sir,
Any further question?
sir, I have a question, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, the pastel environmental system can be affected on the government organization.
Well, certainly it will influence the public service of the government organization as well. The government's organization, every organization out there will be influenced. But it depends on the mechanism of the country or the government's, like, you know, the level of the government's intervention into these. But definitely these are something that will influence every type of organization, regardless of whatever they are, whether they private, whether they, like, you know, non-profit, whether they public service organization. This is bound to influence every type of organization. Good question, Mubarak. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so moving on, I hope this gives you a very clear understanding of what is external environment and what is pastel analysis. So we'll move on to the next bit. Macro environmental analysis. Now, you may wonder, like, why do you even need to understand the macro environmental analysis? So the macro environmental analysis attempts to answer 2 questions. Question number 1, what are the major trends affecting the future growth of the industry? And question number 2, will this industry grow faster or slower than average industry growth rates? All right, so this is the main question fundamentally for any business manager, because you might wonder, okay, so why do we need to understand the macro environmental analysis? What's the importance? Why do we need to talk about macro environmental factors? Simply, first of all, what are the major trends? Because depending on the major trends affecting the future growth of the industry, your decision will change. And probably this is what Kodak or brands like Nokia or BlackBerry failed to understand. What are the major trends? Because they didn't have much answer, or they didn't take enough action with the major trends. So that's one of the things. And the second thing is, will this industry grow faster or slower? And that's another key element. And that's why we'll talk about Michael Porter's 5 forces model, because that will help us to understand the growth rate of the industry or the profitability of the industry. Now, I wonder if all of us have a clear understanding. What does the word industry mean? Can someone just elaborate? Do you all have a clear understanding with the term industry? What do you understand by industry?
The same company, like cement industry. There's a lots of company in cement industry.
Very well said. Thank you.
Communication company like Grameenphone, Bangalink, Airtel. then the same company exists in the country.
Yes.
That makes the industry average.
Very well. Thank you so much, Mohsina. Well done. So it is all of those businesses working together under the same business sector. Like telecom, it's an industry. Banking, it's an industry. Hospitality and tourism, that's an industry. Then, public service or the government organization, that's an industry as well. Under each of these industries, there are lots of different businesses. So these are all businesses or brands or organizations, but the industry is the business sector under which the business will operate. So imagine tomorrow you are planning to start your business, all right? And you're thinking, all right, I'm going to get into e-commerce business. I've got an idea. I want to start an e-commerce business. So that decision, first, you need to understand, you need to answer these two questions. Okay, what are the major trends affecting the future growth of the e-commerce industry? And second, will the e-commerce industry grow faster or slower than average industry growth rates? So you need these two answers. So even before, when you next time you think about business ideas, because a lot of you may have some entrepreneurial, spirit, or you want to have some ideas. Oh, I've got great ideas. But first, you need to answer these two. If you don't have the answer of these two, you'll probably not be able to proceed any further unless otherwise you answer these two. So we already talked about the first one with the pestle analysis, because to understand the major trends affecting the industry, you need to do the pestle analysis. But to understand, will the industry grow faster or slower, you need to understand Michael Porter's 5 forces model. So welcome to Dr. Porter's legacy, Michael E. Porter. So he still is Harvard professor and a scholar who talked about the industry analysis. And analyze the state of the competition of the industry, assesses 5 forces driving competition, and then how good is the game? That's the main thing. You need to understand the game well. If you don't understand the game well, you will not be able to play well in that field or in that game. So you really need to have that key. So we are going to talk about Michael Porter's 5 forces analysis. And this is something I want all of you to very carefully understand. And feel free to ask me a question at any point if you've got any confusion, all right? So Michael Porter coined this theory called Michael Porter's 5 forces model, which determines the competitive rivalry or intensity and therefore attractiveness of a market. So the word attractiveness is a very nice word chosen by Michael Porter, which says that you need to understand whether this industry is attractive or not. Is this industry attractive for doing business? Yes or no? Changes in any of the forces normally requires a company to reassess the market. Okay, so that's what 5 forces model is. 5 forces model simply says, determine the competitive rivalry and also the attractiveness of a market. I will again pause in this place and I want to reflect a little bit on these 2 words. First one is competitive intensity and the second one is attractiveness of the market. Can someone tell me the first one? Competitive intensity, what does that mean? I know a lot of you have lots of talents, bringing lots of experience. So I want you to just speak up, share your thoughts as well.
So the nature of competition?
Yes. So the intensity means how intense the competition is, right? Like whether it's lots of competition or not so much competition in the market. Okay, so that's first thing that 5 forces model will help us to understand the nature of the competitive industry. Now tell me again, probably reflect, tell me one industry where there are lots of competition, and tell me one industry when there's not a lot of competition. Let's think about some examples.
So if you look up through the pharmaceutical companies right now, they have lots of competitors in the market.
Okay, that's good.
Huge competition right now.
Yes, with the COVID, rising nature of COVID, every brand or, the major brands, they're trying to bring the vaccine of the COVID and, all the health and well-being related. All right. Okay. Think about some industries when their competitive intensity is very low.
Telecom industry.
Sir, it could be telecom industry because the investor will not have that much money to invest on a project in a very high rate. So I think it would be telecom industry.
That's it. I will take that as a very good answer. Thanks, Aisha. So
company like Wasa, sir, company like Wasa and Disco.
Yeah, the power sector, yes, because some industries, they're very investment intensive, right? Like telecommunication, it's a very investment heavy industry. Not every business or not anyone can just wish and they start a telecom brand. It's a very investment heavy business. So the competitive intensity in these organizations could be comparatively less. Having said that, it still depends the number of competitors in the market, because right now in the competitive, like in the telecom sector, if we still look into the telecom sector in Bangladesh, I think it's still very high. The competitive intensity is still very high because in this small country, there's probably already 6-7 operators are already fighting with each other, right? So there's few things that needs to be considered. But again, that's what we're going to assess. And our today's exercise is entirely dedicated to understand the 5 forces. And you'll actually really find this really interesting. If you're enjoying this course, you will really find this theory very interesting. So depending on the competitive intensity, you can tell the attractiveness, whether this market is attractive or not. Now let's begin the 5 forces analysis. What's the first force? Yeah.
I have a question. For the competitive industry, does it related with red ocean and blue ocean theory?
Well, that is something a bit far from what we're talking about. The blue ocean theory, that's a strategy. The blue ocean is a separate kind of strategy, and that's a different way to look at the market. So I would not relate the blue ocean strategy. The blue ocean strategy is like, sometimes a market is compared. It's another way to look at it, like, whether the ocean is, sometimes the ocean is like, very stable, not enough, like, big fish. But sometimes there could be in the blue ocean, there could be lots of sharks. There could be big sharks. There could be like lots of fish, like, fighting with each other. So it's an analogy used for business. So maybe I'll not bring this one up. We'll probably leave that for another class's discussion, but it's a good thing to bring it up. Let's just dive into the 5 forces now. First force is actually to understand the threat of substitute products. All right. So this is one of the first force. So we're talking about there. So Michael Porter, again, just reflecting back, Michael Porter, he's saying that there are 5 different forces that actually influences an industry. And depending on the intensity of these 5 forces, a brand can assess the attractiveness of that industry. So the first force is the threat from the substitute product. So this will determine whether the industry is attractive or not, profitable or not. So the threat of substitute product. So let's first understand what is a substitute product. Who can tell me what is a substitute product? Probably with some examples.
There's the alternative one.
I say that.
All right, you go, Saida. Saida, go first.
All right, so thank you. So let's say that someone prefers to eat the Whopper meal from Burger King. All right, so that person has a huge amount of money. But on the other hand, someone don't have that much of money, but he prefers to eat the same quality type of food from a different types of restaurant that they can provide them. So that's why that person chooses BFC instead of Burger King's that Whopper meal. So I'd say that BFC is providing that food that's considered to be the substitute product.
Okay, all right. So if we consider food, like, maybe fast food, and its substitute could be some other type of product, right? Is that what you're saying? Or you're talking about, like, BFC?
It can be for beverages as well, sir.
Okay, all right. I'll go to the next one who wanted to share some thoughts. Who is the next one?
So may I?
Yeah, Mubarak, go ahead, please.
So I think substitute product is a necessary product to run the exact product. Like a phone and charger is a substitute product. Some of the company sell their phone, but they are not provide the headphone. I think the
It's
headphone
a
is
complementary
substitute
product, sir.
Okay, all right.
That is complementary product actually, not substitute.
It's a complementary product, not substitute.
So it is something identical
I think
Okay.
I think I would like to prefer a cup of coffee, but I couldn't afford that. But instead of that, I can drink a cup of tea.
Okay, yeah, that's very good. I'm really enjoying this. A lot of you have got lots of thoughts. That's great. Tanzila wanted to share something. Tanzila, you go next.
Sir, according to me, substitute product is something that is similar and identical to consumer eyes. Sir, for example, physical books we can buy from shops, and for substitute we use ebooks or online sources for that book's PDF format.
Okay, all right, all right. Look, I mean, thanks for all of your thoughts and reflections and sharing your ideas. Now, let me just clarify that a little bit. So you need to understand two different things. One is an alternative product or alternative brand, and the other one is a substitute product. These are two different things, all right? So first, a customer goes to fast food chain KFC. If he or she does not like KFC, they'll change their mind and they'll go to Pizza Hut from the next day. That's not a substitute product, by the way. That is just switching to alternative brand. But the substitute product would be something closely similar that will serve the same purpose. And an example.
So, like, sir, is BFC, sir, for instance. BFC would be a substitute for KFC case of flavor.
That's the part that we have to understand. BFC would not be substitute product. That will still be an alternative brand or alternative product.
So, like,
product is something that will serve the same purpose. Close substitute, almost closely, it will serve the same purpose. Let me give you another example. Now, you want to go from Dhaka to Chittagong. You have a choice. You want to go by bus, right? Now, the bus, there's some strike in the bus. So your alternative would be train, all right? So that's your alternative. But when you want to go from Dhaka to Malaysia, all right? What choices have you got?
Just flight.
Only one choice, right? You only can go by plane. Do you have a substitute product?
No, sir. No, sir.
You don't have a substitute product there. You have only one choice. You have to fly. You don't get to go to Malaysia by rocket or by submarine. That's not yet possible. Maybe that will be possible in next 30 years later. But still now, the only substitute that only option that you have is flying from one place to another. So the answer is there's no substitute of flying. But if you want to go select the roadway transport, you have some substitute. You have bus, you have train, or you can drive, right? So some products will have substitute. Or some products, they have threat of substitute product, but there are some products that does not have any threat from the substitute product. An example is airlines. No, they don't have any threat from the substitute product. But if you are in the banking industry, maybe you have lots of substitute product. Like people, they're doing banking in the telecom nowadays. Like, previously people used to exchange money from bank to bank, but nowadays people can actually do banking with their phones. So the telecom industry is bringing some substitute product of the banking industry these days. So banking industries are at risk these days from the telecom industry, because all the mobile operators, they have this mobile wallet thing through which you can actually exchange money. But there are some other products like, essential commodities, tea, sugar, milk. Now, do these products have any substitute? The answer is no. There's no substitute of tea.
No, sir. No, sir. No substitute.
There's no substitute of milk. There's no substitute of sugar. There's no substitute of like salt. So you need to understand the threat of the substitute, the existence. In some industries, there exists close substitute product. In some industries, there's no substitute at all. Buyer propensity to substitute. To what extent buyers, they have the propensity to go to the substitute product. The relative price performance of the substitute. The perceived level of product differentiation. That's also another important. What's the perceived level of product differentiation? In some industries, the perceived level of product differentiation is very less between the substitute product. And the example could be tea and coffee. Like, sometimes you might switch from tea to coffee, all right? The level of differentiation between tea and coffee is not too wide. Like, both serve the same purpose, caffeinate your body. When you need some caffeine, that's when you probably go for tea or coffee. Now, sometimes you might change. Like, I used to drink probably 3 coffees a day when I was in Australia, because in Australia we get probably the world-class coffee, but here I'm not getting those brands. So these days I'm mostly drinking tea here in Bangladesh. So I'm using that as a substitute. Although it's not exactly giving me the same performance or the same taste, but still this is working like a substitute. So is there a confusion or any question?
Sir, it is like doing the same goal but with 2 different outcomes.
Almost, yes.
Sir, can we give the example of pen and a pencil, because they serve the same thing?
Yeah, you can.
So what is product differentiation?
So product differentiation is the level of, like, the attributes, how to what extent they match or mismatch. That's differentiation. How much different is from one substitute to the other one. Like, for instance, railway transportation and bus transportation, the level of product differentiation, well, you can argue like, rail is much safer because you have less likelihood to get into an accident compared to a bus transportation. So differentiation tells you the elements that are different. Although the products will serve the similar purpose, but their level of performance might vary, and that will say the level of differentiation.
Sir, in case of pen and paper, what it is it a substitute or an alternative?
No, pen
and paper. No, sir, pen and pencil. Pen and pencil, not pen and paper, pen and pencil.
Yeah, they are substitute product, but when it comes to pen, you say ballpoint pen or pen with the ink. That's an alternative product. Like, it's a pen, that's a fountain pen, that's a ballpoint pen, that's a gel pen. These are alternative product. But a substitute of pen would be pencil.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So are we all clear on this part? Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
I'm taking that as a yes. So I'll move on to the next force. So the next force is threat of new entrants. Industries like a club and barriers to entry. So that's something you need to understand, that whether there is threat from new entrants and to what extent, the degree of the threat of the new entrants. Profitable markets that yield high returns will draw firms. The existence of barriers to entry, patents or rights, etc., expected retaliation by incumbents, government policies, strong brands, access to distribution channels. So, what extent there is a threat of the new entrant? So, think about some industries where there is a very higher threat of new entrants, whereas in some industries, there is a very low threat of new entrants. Let's think about it.
Like e-commerce industry, it has a
high or low?
High.
Very high, yes. Lots of e-commerce brands.
Yes, yes.
E-Valley.
And yes.
Like E-Valley, someone
Yes,
trying to do like, dodgy things, unfortunately.
Dodgy things, yes.
But still, there are lots of e-commerce brands these days. They are trying to get into the e-commerce. So the threat of new entrants is very high in e-commerce. If you want to trade into the e-commerce, you got to be very careful because there are lots of brands out there. But think about an industry where the threat of new entrants is low.
So pharmaceutical industry?
Yes, probably pharmaceutical. Sorry?
So utilities company like oil, gas, electricity.
Yeah, that's right. So these are very investment heavy industries, and not many industries would have the guts or would like to get into those. Maybe telecom industry in the Bangladesh, the threat of new entrants is very low at the moment. I don't think after already we've got 6 operators or probably 7, and any further or some new entrants will dare to get into this. Pharmaceuticals, yes, it's very investment. You need massive plants and production facility. Utilities, gas and oil and like electricity, it's very hard. So threat of new entrants is another force that will tell you the industry profitability. Okay, very good. I'm really pleased that you're all understanding. Okay, third force, the intensity of competitive rivalry. So how intense is the competitive rivalry? That's another question or another force, and that will determine the industry attractiveness. For most industries, this is the major determinant of the competitiveness of the industry. Number of competitors, rate of industry growth, level of advertising expense, high exit barriers, which could cause a firm to remain in an industry even when the venture is not profitable. Manufacturing specialized machinery not easily sold, shipyards. Example is given already. Again, think about it. Intensity of competitive rivalry, where the intensity of competitive rivalry is very high and very low.
So if we look at the restaurant business in Dhaka city, so here the competitive rivalry is very much massive because people are coming with new theme-based ideas, restaurants. That's why the competition is pretty much higher over here.
Yes, very nice. Thanks, Saida. And think about an industry or sector where the intensity of competitive rivalry is very low.
And utilities industry or company, the competitive rivalry is, I think, 0.
Yes, probably the power sector. Yes, the competitive rivalry is very low, probably 0. There are some industries like, when it comes to heavy machineries, not many brands would involve. When it comes to like, brands like or products like weapons industry, some brands, they're producing like weapons or, nuclear things or, massive like, scientific products or something like that. The intensity of competitive rivalry is very less. So And the number of competitors, that's something you also need to consider as well. How many competitors do you really have in that industry? That's really important. In some industries, like even in a food sector, in the restaurant, you'll see there are like thousands and if not millions of businesses out there. But there's some others where their number of competitors is really low. So before you want to consider or you want to understand the industry attractiveness, you need to understand what is this force. This was the third force. Okay, the fourth one, the bargaining power of your customers. So here's another one, the bargaining power of your customers. The ability of customers to put the firm under pressure, buyer's price sensitivity. The buyer sets the price, monopoly industry, strong bargaining power. Like some example, few buyers with strong market share. Like, US military, weak bargaining power, buyers very fragmented, lots of them, mostly consumer goods. So some clues are already given for you as well. So there's some industries where the bargaining power of customers is very high, and in some industries where the bargaining power of the consumer is very low. Let's think about some other examples other than what we've got in the slide. Can I have not the usual people to always respond and some the others that are hiding with lots of talent to speak up as well? Muntasin, I haven't heard anything from you yet. Can you think about something like an industry where the bargaining power of the customer is very high? Tamara. That was not audible.
Sir, telecommunication industry is strong bargaining power. I don't know actually.
I think telecommunication is very low.
The bargaining power of the customers?
Yes, sir,
Right,
it's very low.
Let's have a
I think, sir.
discussion. Yeah, go on.
Sir, in the machinery sector,
Did you say a high bargaining power?
Okay.
Did you say high bargaining power? I think high bargaining power is in finance sector.
Okay, all right, that's a good one.
So in the insurance companies?
Is it high or low bargaining power?
Sir, according to me, high.
Okay, all right. What's some thoughts from others? I want to hear. Deboshita. Again, sorry, am I pronouncing that right? My apologies if I'm not.
So you can call me Debbie.
Debbie, oh, okay, nice. That makes it easy. Sorry, Debbie. Okay, what's your thought, Debbie? Which industry are you working, Debbie?
So software industry.
Okay. Do you think the bargaining power of your customer is high or low?
Very high, sir.
Very high. What makes you think that?
Yeah. So whenever we prepare a price quotation, the customer always try to reduce the price, and they bargain a lot.
Because they always have options, right?
Yes.
Okay. So customers only bargain when they have lots of options. That's another good point. Okay, that's a good one. Thanks. Going to Nashid. Nashid, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Nashid, what do you work somewhere currently?
No.
Okay. Do you, okay, tell me, what industries do you think that the customers have very high bargaining power?
I think insurance company and
okay.
Insurance company.
Okay, very good. Yep, that's right. I think there are lots of insurance service providers. Yes.
The telecommunication sector is weak. The bargaining power.
Bargaining power is, well, I think I'd like to argue that because, these days consumers, they have like, we have 6 different operators in this country, right? So if today the Grameen phone service, they raise their call rates, I will probably switch to Banglalink. If Banglalink has got a higher call rate, I'll probably look for Robi. If Robi's call rate is a bit higher, so there's like option. The bargaining power of customers, I think, a bit higher compared to other industries because there's options, right? Like, we do have some choices. Okay, very good. Thanks, Nashid. So you see, the bargaining power of the customers is actually relative to the country or the number of businesses. But essentially what it suggests is that to what extent customers are able to select the alternative brands if they face a higher price from that brand. Now, in most consumer goods, the customer's bargaining power is very weak because for consumer goods, you don't have much choice, right? When it comes to buying consumer goods like, I don't know, maybe milk, maybe sugar, maybe like, onion, maybe potato, whatever that is, in the vegetable or in the fresh food sector, the consumers do not have much bargaining power. If the prices of onion go high as like 300 taka, I think in Bangladesh, the onion price at some point went up to 300 taka or something like that. So people did not have any choice. I think someone from the political party suggested that, well, try to use less onion when you cook. I think the prime minister at that time suggested that try not to use more onion when you cook, and that's the solution.
Yes,
so,
and she gives her example as well.
Yeah,
she told that she started doing so.
Yeah, exactly. So that's funny. But see, we as consumers, we didn't have much choice when it comes to buying onions, do we? Like, you can't alternate that with anything else. But there are other products where your bargaining power is very high. All right, so you need to think about that as well. Okay, so I hope you understood the 4th point. And then the 5th, the last one. So this is the bargaining power of suppliers. Now, suppliers are actually your stakeholder in your business. And depending on your supplier, you will also be influenced. Your business or selection of the industry or the industry attractiveness will also be influenced. Suppliers can exert an influence on producing industry. Suppliers are powerful when there is a significant cost to switch suppliers. Microsoft and PC makers, suppliers weak, tire market. All right, again, reflecting back with some examples. Think about some industries where there is essential to have some supplier, because who are the supplier? The suppliers are the one who will provide you the raw material for the product, right? In some brands or in some products, you need to have supplier. Without the supplier, you cannot do the business because they are the one who are providing you the raw material. For instance, in the automobile industry, the ones who are producing the automobile, they rely on the tires, like, the ones who are producing the tires, because they are producing the body of the car, but the tire manufacturer, they're actually separate because they're the ones who has specialization in transforming rubbers into tires or whatever that is. So if the manufacturer of the tire, they increase the price of the tire, the prices of the automobile or the car will also go up. So the suppliers here will have some influence. Now, depending on to what extent, it will be determined with this intensity of the bargaining power of the supplier. That will be determined by how many suppliers are there. So let's think about some brands now, or some industries where bargaining power of the supplier is high and low.
So garments material supplier is bargaining power is low, I think.
All right, what makes you think that?
So I think there are many options for the supplying the garments materials. Bangladesh garments industries is now very big industries.
Yes.
We have many suppliers.
Yes, that's a good example. I think I will agree with that, because the bargaining power of the suppliers, like all of the ready-made, like, you know, manufacturing or the garments manufacturers, they've got low bargaining power because there's lots of suppliers. So if one of the suppliers will increase the price, the buyers will probably go to the other one. Okay, good example. Someone else with the other example? I haven't heard anything from Rubaba Tahsin. Rubaba, are you still in the class with me? Not sure if Rubaba can hear me. I have not heard anything from Tamanna Rahman. You're with us, Tamanna? All right. Not sure if these are chatbots.
Sir, I think, sir, there are like a lot of car brands. Those are not
Can you
much
speak with your
available.
cameras on, please, if you don't mind, Janatul?
Sir, can I just turn on my camera a little later?
Okay, all right. Sure.
Sorry, sir. So, sir, there are like a few car brands. So those parts of that car brands are not much available. I think bargaining power of those parts are higher, such as Honda's parts.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Good example. So in the automobile industry, some of the suppliers, they have very high bargaining power because they may have some specialized product which they are providing. Tanzila raised a hand. Please, Tanzila, proceed with your response.
Sir, for hyper, I think makers of steel and cement company, industry like steel and cement, there are the hyper of suppliers. And for lower suppliers are perishable item, for vegetable, milk, sellers who sell this type of item, there are low power of suppliers, bargaining power.
Yes, very good. That's a very good articulation. Thank you so much. So ones that are producing perishable goods, like, you know, vegetable, fruits, their bargaining power is generally low, unfortunately, because their product is perishable. So they cannot bargain for those products. And there are lots of suppliers out there. From the village, there are lots of farmers producing those products. But if one of them, they're producing something that's really very demandable and there's very less suppliers, maybe they have a bit higher bargaining power. Maybe someone is producing a dragon fruit. These days, dragon fruit is becoming very popular. So if you're farming and if you're considering which industry or which product to choose, maybe you can think about strawberry or dragon fruit, because these would have a little higher bargaining power compared to if you're just producing, like, you know, potatoes or onions or, you know, palong shak, spinach and things like that. So,
sir,
yeah, go ahead.
Sir, can we use diamond producers, the companies which produce diamonds? They have, I guess, higher bargaining power.
Yes, that's
or the
correct.
airlines industry, airlines companies.
Yes, that's correct. Very high bargaining power. The suppliers, they have, like, you know, not many brands out there is producing or extracting diamonds from the mineral. So they have very high bargaining power. That's a good example. Thanks. All right. So I guess that gives you a very clear understanding of the various forces, the 5 forces. So here's a reflection. Why this matters so far, the thing that we discussed so far. Why does this matter? So on the far left-hand side, you can see these 5 forces. And the following 2 columns actually suggest the profitability matrix. So we call this Michael Porter's 5 forces profitability matrix. So competitive rivalry, when there's little rivalry, the profitability is higher. When there's intense rivalry, the profitability is lower. So just take a bit of pause here, one by one, and reflect, all right? Give a little bit of pause and think about that again. So competitive rivalry means how many competitors are there in the market. So if the rivalry or the competition is little, yes, that means you have profitability is higher. And again, the good example is pharmaceuticals. Maybe in pharmaceuticals, there's not too many rivals. So the rivalry is little. So the profitability is very high because, you know, the ones who are producing COVID vaccine, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and probably 1 or 2 more, and that's it. Whatever the price of the COVID vaccine is, the governments are bound to pay that price. So the profitability of these brands is very high. But there are some other industries where the rivalry is intense, like, you know, telecom, 6 operators, like restaurants, many. So the profitability is becoming lower and lower. Next one, threat of new entrants. Little threat, higher profitability. Higher threat, lower profitability. Power of buyers. Weak buyers, that means profitability is higher because buyers do not have much power. Strong buyers, profitability is lower. As simple as that. Power of suppliers. Weak suppliers, profitability is higher. Strong suppliers, profitability is lower. Threat from substitutes. Few substitutes, that means profitability is higher. Threat from many substitutes, profitability is lower.